Here we go. Welcome, everyone. December 9th, here we are, DCA podcast. I'm joined today with Mando. What's up, Mando?
Hey, man. How are you?
Stanford's,
Morning.
CTO Lost to my left, and me, Marty Party. We're here today on this crazy morning. A lot of volatility over the weekend. Continuing today with the market open. We see bouncing off the 100K mark over and over again. We knew this would happen, but it still is extremely nerve-wracking. At the same time, we've got Michael Saylor making another huge purchase, and we see BlackRock moving Bitcoin. So here we are, guys. We called 100K last week. We made 100K. Here we are. Well done. And now we have to get through the 100K sell walls. We know it's going to go over 100, come under 100, go over 100, come under 100. And it appears as if Michael Saylor is buying every time it comes under 100, he makes a purchase. So we've got a big show today. Lots of things to cover since last week. There we go. Thanks, James, for the agenda. We've called this Let the Game Theory Begin, and we all understand what that means. We've got a large new audience for Bitcoin, right? Strategic reserves. It started off with talk. It went into the Trump election, the talk of the U.S. We've got Senator Loomis talking about the U.S. proposing a bill, Bitcoin Act 2024, which kicked off further speculation, and now it's drifted off into corporates. We've got MicroStrategy accumulating nearly as much as BlackRock, and now we've got talk of Microsoft looking to add to their reserve, and over the weekend, even talk of Amazon looking to add to their reserve. So that's really the narrative of the day. Let the game theory begin. The accumulation of Bitcoin, how much is left, how do they get it in their hands, and what is the ultimate plan? So let's just kick it off with a little round table. Mando, tell me about your week and your weekend. What are your thoughts before we kick off into the agenda? What are you feeling today?
I mean, I was a little bit cautious last week just because of the rally and all these dino coins. And then we did sell off. We had a dip on Solana all the way down to like 120s and it actually lower than that, one like 115, I think, at one stage. And then we rallied back. You know, Bitcoin's broken an all-time high. It still feels as though the strength is in altcoins right now. Bitcoin dominance has been going down slightly. ETH obviously breached 4K. Solana's been a slight underperformer. I am still a little bit wary of the market dynamic here. Like I'm not huge. It scares me when like a lot of these like I don't know, coins which are acting like meme coins are like leading. And I think the one other thing is that I over the last week it does feel as though the Michael Saylor buys have not necessarily been met with a bullish sentiment from market commentators. I think there's a lot more commentary about the idea that he's averaging in at a much higher level and just to be a bit more wary. That's definitely something that I've noticed about MicroStrategy that's slightly changed. A few more like hit pieces, let's say, but let's see. I do think we're going to see quite a lot of volatility around this 100K level is basically what I'm saying.
It's interesting. Marcus Saylor's now he's got MicroStrategy's got 423,650 Bitcoin. The average price is now 60,324, if I'm correct. James, is that right? James, let's swing to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I've got, well, this is interesting. And I think what Manda says is, you know, if something happens so many times, people just learn to accept it. It becomes the new norm, is him buying every single week. It was very clear. I made a little video on it, a very short one last week, of how you could see them ATMing the stock. Stock goes to $400 and then massive amount of kind of market sells all the way down to about 370. And it's very clear the money that came for this 21,000 Bitcoin came from that ATM sell. And then all of a sudden that stopped late last week because perhaps, again, just guessing here with the data, that maybe the QQQ edition is going to be announced on the 13th or the 15th of this month. But they can't ATM after a certain time frame, and sometimes it's 5 days before that announcement. The NAV premium is actually very low right now. It's about 2.18, which is the lowest it's been all year. And the average cost, etc., Marty, as you say, is super interesting. So they've nearly doubled their bag this year, and that is astounding, especially when you consider how high the Bitcoin price is. So Yeah, and the other thing is we'll talk about too is there's rumors of he had 2 meetings with Microsoft. It's Michael Saylor meeting with Microsoft, and now Amazon from Dennis Porter are also coming to the table. If one of these 2 hits, that's it. Game theory. There be a massive rush to stack as much of this as possible, I believe.
From a technical perspective, I have my theories, but feature a lot, and I'd love to hear it from you. Can you show us maybe potentially a Bitcoin chart where we are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that some resistance here at 100,000, it has to be expected. I think there's a lot of people who have had Bitcoin from 100 or 1,000 or 3,000 or 10,000, thinking that if Bitcoin ever hits $100,000, I'm going to sell some. And here we are. So every time price goes above 100,000, it kind of someone big sells, price dips down. I think the first dip that we got, that was really a liquidation candle. The other ones, I think it's people selling when it's above 100,000. So I think some resistance here must be expected. We talked about it before. That is the only resistance level that we had in the chart. But looking at the chart right now, it's actually not so worrying. This is a symmetrical triangle. That means that we're getting higher lows and lower highs. So this is a symmetrical triangle after a big move up that kind of favors continuation, though it can break in both directions. But there's nothing really concerning in the chart right now. And in fact, this is a quite positive chart construction. And I think we will consolidate here a little bit. And I do think that we at one point will break 100K after exhausting the sell interest that is here. And then we'll be in price discovery again. But now we're still consolidating below here. And that's the situation in the market. But there's not a doomsday situation at all, as I saw some people writing about. This is still okay. This is not a breakdown yet. This is on very low time frames, and these are very small movements. So that's the state of the Bitcoin chart.
I think what's also happening right now behind the scenes, why people are freaking out. Let me see if I can actually share the screen of what's actually is going on. Give me 1 second, because this is important. Present. Make sure I get my browser. Arkham have reported. Hello, window. This guy. This is BlackRock's wallet. And they've been literally, in the space of a very short window of time, moving amounts of 600 Bitcoin out of their main wallet. And that is to the tune of like 32% of their entire bag. So can you explain, as the market freaks out, it's like, oh my God, BlackRock just dumped 2/3 of their bag. From a security perspective, Marty or CTO, can you explain why a big player like BlackRock actually moves stuff around for security reasons? And could that be the reason for this?
I mean, personally, I don't think there's a definitive, until we know that it's all mystery. But at the end of the day, this actually started 4 days ago. If you go and look at the chart at the top, you'll see they started moving on the 5th. That's 4 days ago, in units of 600 to brand new wallets. So if you do a spatial visualization, you'll see they've moved from sort of 1 or 2 centralized wallets into many smaller wallets. And this might be, as you said, a security maneuver to try and, just move it from one wallet, which would obviously be a risk, or a custody change. Once again, you remember BNY Mellon also got approved as a custodian. We might see BlackRock separating and hedging between Coinbase and BNY Mellon. They roughly have 318,000 in their original wallets, so down around pretty much 50%. Looks like they've moved 50% of their Bitcoin holdings of their clients into these newer wallets. And we'll have to see through the course of the day where these eventually land up. But as of now, I agree with you. This is going to obviously cause people concern. Why are they moving? And the whole narrative is people think when Bitcoin is moved that it's going to be sold, which is not true at all. Bitcoin is moved for many reasons. Custody.
I think experience showed that someone moving coins around doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean
it's enough to rattle the market, because that's the story today. So.
But as I say, this will create a narrative, and we've seen it all over X today. People, why they're moving, etc., etc. So that's a big story today as well. MicroStrategy buying a large amount of Bitcoin, heading up towards the 500,000 level, and BlackRock moving Bitcoin. We're not quite sure where they're moving it, why they're moving it. I'm sure we'll know by the end of the day or by the end of the week. Okay, so that's where we are. As far as I'm concerned, my personal perspective is price makes narrative, and price is manipulated by the derivative market, the casino. We saw Bitcoin rise up to around 104,000, which is exactly where we always thought it would go. And from there, as CTO Larson says, we're creating a large triangle, a large wedge. So we should see lower highs, higher lows, consolidating towards, I would say, 100,000, which is exactly what we always said would happen. From there, we don't know. It could bounce down to the 200 EMA as it does normally to liquidate all leveraged longs down to the lower leveraged numbers like 5Xs, etc., which is around, let me have a look today, the 200 EMA is roughly today at 91,600. So we came down to roughly 91,400. So they could put a higher low down somewhere around there and really shake out all that leverage. But then I think we move up, and we've got targets out of the bullish pennant of 108,000, going up to the cup and handle targets at around 125. So I think this is a typical trading strategy. Remember, long positions are sold, and then they are taken back. And that's just the way the market works, as well as people buy Bitcoin, and they usually take profits, like CTO Larson says. And it usually comes to around 50% of the move. So we're, as far as I'm concerned, exactly on schedule. I also like to point out the parabolas. As we know, in a bull market, we tend to make a parabolic pattern. That's higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, and it gets more and more exponential and parabolic. The price will bounce off the 200 EMA, get a new high, consolidate, come back down to the 2 EMA, or consolidate long enough that the parabola comes to meet the price. And that's what we've seen with Bitcoin over the weekend. The parabola came, met the price. I think they're doing their final flush to shake out most of the last remaining longs and to capitulate longs. And then I think we should see the move over 100,000 this week and stay over 100,000. Okay, that's Bitcoin. As far as alts are concerned, as we know, alts will follow Bitcoin, or almost like a mirror in these bull market rallies.
Marty, before you go on, there was a spectacular event last week. Yes. Maybe talk the audience through what happened. We had an $11,000 drop in Bitcoin in a couple of hours.
Yes, I call this the Royal Flush, the Binance Royal Flush. Basically, a flush is when the derivative exchange will market sell enough of the asset to trigger large amounts of liquidations of leveraged longs. And as we know, when a leveraged long gets liquidated, it's a market sell. Okay, so that market sell causes the price to go lower, hitting further longs just below it, causing more market sells, and you get what we call a ladder. And as you saw, the ladder went almost exactly to my lower liquidation level. At 91,400, I think, was the ultimate target that was hit, taking out all leverage longs. And that sort of sets the lower point of the triangle. So the higher point was 104, the lower point was 91,400, and I think we should see lower highs, higher lows, and a consolidation around that triangle. But that was an extremely, obviously, frightening event. People think that everyone is selling, but they must understand that that's not the way it works. This is just because it's extremely bullish asset. So many people are longing. I mean, people long any dip on Bitcoin. It's a constant churning of longs, and then the exchange has to try and get rid of those longs because they can't carry those longs. They have to pay those longs under leverage, for infinity if the price never comes down here again. So they're going to chase them, force them out, trigger stop losses, or ultimately try and liquidate them. And these leverage flushes like this, called liquidation ladders, are part of crypto. And if you're new to crypto, they scare the hell out of you. If you're an OG like us, we're used to them. And as I tell my community, they're an opportunity. If you set your longs whenever, at the bottom of these ladders, it's an extremely high probability success to make profit. So there we have it. So we saw the mega royal flush from Binance, who initiate these things, and pretty much exactly as expected. And then what was really interesting was the immediate trigger right back up over 100, which shows the tremendous bullishness of this asset, and the incredible amount of buy walls, institutional buy walls, sitting at those levels, protecting the price from going any further lower. But I think we should expect Bitcoin now. We can see it turned around to 97,800, setting a higher low. I think it's going to run up now and test 100 again. And this is going to go on probably for the rest of the week.
Yep. So if
you understand the market, go ahead.
And be careful with leverage longs, because you will be hunted. So make sure you're way below any threshold, and do not play with 50x or 100x, because you're looking to just get wrecked.
Yeah, the statistics are 99.99% of 100x's or higher get liquidated. 75% of 50x's get liquidated. And then it drops quite substantially to the 25x's. It's just under 50%. The 10x's are around 20%. The 5x's are under 5%. So 5x and under is the recommended leverages, which is what we use. Anybody who's a professional trader will be doing between 1.8 and 5x. Anything higher than that is considered gambling, and the casino will always chase you down. Unless you're scalping extremely quickly and taking profits, which you ultimately will probably lose anyway, despite what anyone says. I would avoid anything over 5x.
Dude.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So that's the update on Bitcoin. And the game theory behind it. Understand that there's a lot of large players looking to buy Bitcoin, and they're not going to pay top price. Remember, if you have a large size order in the billions, you expect a discount. And that discount will be created very easily by the exchange using their manipulation tactics. And so I think today we saw another version of that. Somebody placed a large order around 97,500. The price came down immediately to get that order. And here we can see my chart that I've been posting now for months, which I find to be the most, crypto 101 view of what I think is happening. And that is that gold, as you saw on the monthly, had its distribution whack off, its accumulation whack off, its reaccumulation whack off, and then went off to the moon on its rally towards the target. You can see it's roughly 3/4 of the way there. And Bitcoin on the weekly is pretty much doing a mirror image of that. And here we are, we're around 50% of the way. And we're in that mid consolidation, which gold just completed. Now, what I expect is to see gold make a move next, potentially higher, and then Bitcoin to follow with a little bit of a lag. And you can see this is a great chart just to watch for peace of mind and mental clarity of where we are and what's going on.
And for those who can't see, the target's 125. Yeah, I just want to mention that.
Yeah, and that matches with the cup and handle. It matches with many different confirmed technical analysis numbers at 125. I believe we run to 125, possibly get another liquidation, and all the new longs from this consolidation to 125 will need to get liquidated. So we should see it run to 125 and then see another staggeringly low $10,000 wick to take out all of the new longs, consolidate in the midpoint, and then move up to the top, where I think we see, a decent consolidation for, a couple of 100 days. So,
CTO, how does that jive? How does that 125K target jive with your chart?
I love this comparison, by the way, from Marty. I think this is fantastic. It kind of simplifies technical analysis, not so complicated. And the reason it works, a lot of people say it's just magic lines. No, but it's just explaining human behavior. It goes in cycles. People, they want to exit and they want to re-enter. That's the reaccumulation and so on. Consolidation is just hesitation. So the period that we had here for almost the whole 2024, it's the same as in gold. It's just hesitation that we had there for a long period of time. And then we kind of break out of that hesitation and continue. And now we're kind of in that hesitation again. And the thing, though, is that I don't really have a target-based approach, because I think if you go back in history, you go back to some time, I don't know, let's go back to when I came in 2017, or the people who were before much earlier than me, say 2013 or something, when price is like $10, or when it was $1,000 or $3,000, it's very hard to come up with a target of, say, $100,000. It's very hard to derive that from the chart. So I think it's the same thing here. Perhaps we will radically overshoot the target. So a target doesn't mean that it will stop there. It just means that there's a good chance it will reach, which are two different things. So that's why I don't really use a target-based approach. I don't sell at resistance. I don't sell at 100,000 or say that we correctly identify a target of 120 or 130,000. If price reaches it, I won't sell there. I will still look at the chart, see what is the construction, is there a top pattern, is there a parabola broken, and if there's not, we might continue, and then I'll stay in the game. So, but the targets are very useful, but I don't really sell at the target, if that makes sense.
Okay, man, Marty, over to you.
Yeah, then moving on. Let's go. Let's move on to the updates from the regulators. Some other news we saw this week, which is staggering, is Jerome Powell in his Deal Book Summit talk, which is a very pivotal talk to get insights into the next rate cut meeting and setting up 2025 and the new administration. For the first time ever, mentioned Bitcoin. He was asked a question directly about Bitcoin, and we all saw staggeringly, he said Bitcoin is a clear competitor to gold. And I think that triggered quite a rally right after he said that, rightfully so. This is a very new narrative from the Federal Reserve, from Jerome Powell. And right after that, a few days later, in the Office of Debt Management of the US Treasury, they put out their fiscal year 2024 report and said the same thing. In the text, they said, the primary use case for Bitcoin, which, believe me, this is the first time I've ever seen the word Bitcoin in one of these reports. The primary use case for Bitcoin seems to be a store of value, aka digital gold, in a decentralized financed world. So they've used Bitcoin and DeFi in the US Treasury Q4 report, which is staggering as well. Guys, any thoughts on this? Any takeaways from this? Did you watch Jerome Powell's speech? Any feelings, Mando?
Yeah, look, I think this is actually quite astute from them. I think Bitcoin is digital gold. I think that's kind of the narrative that it's taken. It's less of a payments network, although maybe some of the L2s come in and change that. And what I've noticed is you've seen a lot of gold bulls get very aggressive in their commentary over the last 2 or 3 weeks, including Peter Schiff. I think there are two main things. It's this sort of commentary from Jerome Powell, and then also a few Bitcoiners talking about converting some of the gold reserve to Bitcoin. So right now, you're definitely seeing a lot of hot takes on gold versus Bitcoin. And to be honest, gold bulls have been like trashing Bitcoin for years. I don't mind Bitcoin coming back and getting them a little bit scared about what's happening here. We've spoken about the fact that gold is actually, it's only a semi-finite resource. You do find new reserves as the price goes up. Sometimes mines become more profitable to go after as the price goes higher, and Bitcoin is completely finite. So it's a slightly different resource, and I think there is definitely, if I was just a gold bull right now, I'd be a little bit scared about Bitcoin. There's a lot of commentary about Bitcoin versus gold, and Jerome Powell's commentary here kind of indicates that too. So it sets itself up to maybe being that strategic reserve status. Who knows? But yeah, good to see. Also, just like a complete change in narrative, like we spoke about this so many different times. It feels as though Trump is really putting together a pro-crypto administration. He said yesterday that he's actually not going to go after Powell, which I think is smart. And it looks like Powell is not going to have an aggressive view against Bitcoin either. So I think we're in a pretty strong case. I still think, I was banging my fist on the table in September saying you should go long, all this sort of stuff. I do think we're going to enter a period here of volatility. I do not think we're just going to straight line here to 125K. We'll continue to see very, very bullish commentary, My view is that leverage has picked up a little bit. Crypto's gone a bit more mainstream. I don't think that 10K wick that we saw midweek is a one-off thing. Like, that tells me that we're entering a bit more of a bull cycle, and that tells me that you see several of those wicks. You know, that's a 11K wick, but that's only 10%. Bitcoin has wicks even bigger than that during a bull market, right? It's just because of the now high price that you think that 10K is a lot. Like, Bitcoin has massive wicks during bull cycles. So if you're out of the market or you felt underinvested, I wouldn't necessarily FOMO. Like, I think there's going to be, but you do have to pull the trigger on these liquidation wicks. So I would be very, very cognizant that we're entering a period here of higher volatility. Bitcoin's hit 100K. Let's all celebrate that, but don't just think it's going to be easy sailing.
And a quick hot tip, Mando, well said there. A quick hot tip on wrecking the market makers is dangle your limit orders down in staggered levels like 93,000, 92,000, 91,000 if you don't have any and you want to get some. And then on these wicks, you get filled nicely before they can.
Yeah, I see that primary support of 88888 as a very critical number. I think at some point they might throw a wick down there. So I've been telling the community to set your limit order starting down there, just under 90,000.
I think one of the exchanges did hit 88,000 last week. I'm not sure which one of the smaller ones on a big wick.
But Mando's 100% right. We typically see a 20% pullback in a bull run. To start it off, I mean, in 2017, I think we saw a 36% pullback in a fast wick to liquidate the leverage. Just understand, people, there is very little way Binance will allow longs to remain large longs before we move up substantially. So they will come back and take them or pressure them to exit. So you have to expect that. As a crypto trader and crypto investor, that is part of the game. It doesn't mean people are selling. Understand that? It means that the exchanges are liquidating longs. It's part of the game, and that's you'll get used to it, like we are. It doesn't scare us anymore. Okay, let's move on to the next slide.
Everyone in the community, do you know why 88,888 came up as a number, and why there's often like 800 in support and resistance and so on?
Chinese good luck number. Chinese good luck number.
Exactly. Chinese good luck number. You don't want to buy your Bitcoin at an unlucky number, right? You want to buy it at the lucky number. That's why.
Everything happens for a reason.
Moving on, let's try to get through the hour. We've got this arms race going on. So the first thing we see is all, the murmurings of publicly traded companies here in the US and around the world in the race to reserve Bitcoin and get it at a low price. Understand that this is becoming quite emergent. The more companies that do it, the more FOMO other companies get, because if they don't do it, they will lose their advantage. And if they do it, they will gain an advantage. And we see, obviously, MicroStrategy leading the way now at an unbelievable 423,000 Bitcoin. But we see Marathon making big moves this week as well, also doing similar things, selling debt and against their corporate holdings to buy Bitcoin. They're up to 35,000 and so on. There was a good tweet out about a list, and it goes MicroStrategy, Marathon Digital, Riot Platform, another Bitcoin miner, so Marathon and Riot. Then Tesla, now in number 4. And Coinbase themselves coming up to 10,000 Bitcoin, their own holdings. CleanSpark, another Bitcoin miner. Hut, another Bitcoin miner. Block Inc., etc., and the list goes on. And I think this is going to be a new narrative leading into 2025. And obviously the next big players, which everyone's talking about, are Microsoft. It appears Saylor has met with them several times. I believe this week they will be making the decision whether to buy Bitcoin into their reserve. And then the Amazon news coming out yesterday, somebody picked it up in their shareholders meeting agenda. They're going to be doing a similar thing, discussing whether the shareholders want to vote on buying Bitcoin for the Amazon reserve. So any guys got any opinions about this? James, I'm sure you do.
Yep. Yeah, treasuries are it. I mean, a lot of these companies, they've got two choices. They sit on their melting ice cube, which is their billions in fiat. Like Warren Buffett has 350 billion, a third of $1 trillion in melting ice cubes. Or you deploy it somehow. You either buy shares back or you stick it into Bitcoin. And anybody who's watched Michael Saylor for the last 4 years saw how powerful that strategy is. And then literally every single day in Canada, there's a publicly traded company pivoting to this Bitcoin reserve treasury strategy, whatever you want to call it. Somehow Canadian firms, it's infecting them like fire. And it's incredible to watch because, we expected this to happen. But when one of these big players, I know we have Tesla up there, number 7 company in the world now, that broke 400 this morning, coincidentally, first time in 1,200 days. But one of these other big players comes in, that's it. That will light the fuse that will take us to the moon. The question is, how are they going to be able to stack without influencing the price? Because the OTC desks are going to run empty. With the Bitcoin buying and the ETF stacking, I don't see how it's going to be sustainable in 2025. That's what I'm looking forward to.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is part of the arms race, is all the strategies involved in how to actually stack, where to get it, how not to influence the price. Because if you understand, any of these large buys does influence any market, the price will zoom up and, they'll lose the discount. So it's a very strategic and tactical game. CTO, any ideas?
Yes, I think this is so interesting. Because it doesn't have to be complete. We're talking about the strategic reserve, and then everyone realized that US probably is not going to say tomorrow that, okay, let's sell all the gold and buy it all in Bitcoin instead. That's not going to happen. But what if some countries say that, probably Bitcoin is just a scam, but what if they are right? So maybe we should buy 1%. Maybe we should sell 1% of the gold and buy that digital gold, just in case, those nerds are right again. And that could happen. I feel that could happen. I think it's the same thing with many of these company treasuries. I don't think that Microsoft is going to say in a couple of days, let's take all the treasury we have and buy Bitcoin for all of it. I don't think that's going to happen. But what if they say, let's take 5% of it and buy, so we have some exposure in case fiat goes down, and we should secure the assets. If that happens, if either of those things happen, then this is going to snowball 100%. Then all the companies are going to feel like, oh, why are we not doing that? We should do it also. And then this could become more of a discussion like how many percent should you hold in government bonds? How many percent should you hold in Bitcoin in your treasury or in your strategic reserve? I feel that is not that far away. That could happen.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
There's another one.
Go ahead, James.
No, Mando.
Yeah, I think there's quite a big difference between companies buying it with cash and companies buying it on leverage. I think Amazon buying it would be huge. Any of the Magnificent Seven stocks or these big US tech stocks with big cash balances, if they're buying it, then I think that's a big difference. I think everyone trying to copy the MicroStrategy playbook, I think it has two sides to it, right? Like levered buying of Bitcoin at this level, there's risks. It's not like it's risk free. So I get very bullish when it's governments or treasuries buying it. I'm less like super bullish if Metaplanet raises another 400 million to buy Bitcoin.
That's right. Also, let's not forget the accounting standards change in a week on the 15th of December, which will be a massive change for these companies and how they account for their Bitcoin. James, maybe you want to tell the audience a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, but before I jump into that, I just do want to share this, the question, because CTO landed on it, who else is stacking? Which sovereign out there is stacking? There's an interesting wallet. I call them now Mrs. 200, which we had the Mr. 100 thing. Now this group, whoever they are buying a lot very quickly. They just bought another 1,000 Bitcoin. Normally they stack in 200 Bitcoin increments. Maybe it's a trader that has billions and billions of dollars, or maybe it's a stacker. We're not sure. But they are aggressively buying, and they don't care what price. So they just bought another 1,000 Bitcoin at 98,323. And, I think these things are important to monitor as well right now. Back to the FASB rule, that will have a huge game-changing influence for these treasuries too. So imagine you were a company like Michael Saylor, your cost basis is $60,000, and Bitcoin goes from $100,000 to $120,000 in a given quarter. Okay, they're a huge bag. You can multiply the delta in price, and that gets added to their quarterly earnings. So all of a sudden, you could theoretically have the creation of the most profitable company quarter over quarter ever in the history of the world. And it's that bonkers. So that's what nobody's ready for. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Bitcoin on a given quarter during the fiscal of MicroStrategy does jump that amount, multiply that by their bag of 430,000 Bitcoin, is big. The earnings per share will be through the moon, and the world's not ready for that. The S&P 500 doesn't even include MicroStrategy yet. The QQQ hopefully will within a week or two, and that'll also be another big catalyst. So back to you, Marty.
Can I just add one more thing, one more thought on this with the companies buying? I think that they haven't really thought about one aspect. If, say, Microsoft actually decides to buy some Bitcoin, they don't even have to buy that many. I can almost guarantee that the stock is going to jump the next day. It's going to be up. The stock will be up. Everyone will be celebrating. The board saying what great people who took this great decision, strategic decision, because they're happy because stock went up. Then the next company board will sit there and think that, oh, that was a good way to get the stock share up. We didn't even have to buy anything. We just had to, buy a little bit of Bitcoin. Then they will do the same. Their stock price will jump as well. Then the next 100 companies will do the same. So I don't know. I'm pretty hopeful that this will happen at some point. I don't know if it will happen with Microsoft this week. Probably not. But, it's pretty soon. I think it's going to happen.
Yep. And retail, and as I've said as well for months, the retail investor no longer matters. It's all a treasury game now, whether it's a US state like a Florida or a Pennsylvania or a Wyoming or a country or a sovereign or an enterprise or a Fortune 500 company. That's the big play.
That's right. Okay, let's move on. Crypto adoption. We've covered Bitcoin pretty well. Let's jump into some other things. We've got crypto adoption, James. If you want to put up the slide you made, the crypto adoption acceleration slide, you can see generally across the board, look at the amount of daily active users across DeFi are growing. It's just a huge pump over the last month. So we've got clear indication of crypto adoption. We've also got crypto being on Google Trends pumping right now, actually over the last week. More retail getting involved. So it appears as if we are true to the cycle, reaching, the point of retail involvement. And another sign of that, obviously, is they're all in podcasts. I don't know if anyone's aware of them. Chamath, David Sachs, etc. Probably the biggest news of the week, obviously, is Donald Trump appointing David Sachs of the All In podcast to be the crypto czar of the US government. Which, is a huge thing. First of all, he's a massive crypto bull. He's an early investor in many projects, including Solana. And then his partner on the show, Chamath, another big Silicon Valley venture capitalist, very much involved in the original Facebook. David was involved in the original PayPal. One could say they're part of the PayPal mafia. They're now heavily involved in the government regulatory and decision-making. And Chamath, on point, put out on X, started to get very vocal about crypto all of a sudden, which to me indicates once again we're heading into a bull run. Chamath praising Solana, talking about Solana being the new Ethereum, and then also putting out a general primer on cryptocurrencies on his page, where this chart came from. So It looks like we're heading into the beginning of that sort of retail wave where the narrative will move on into the mainstream, into the narrative, onto television, into television commercials, and which tends to trigger the distribution phase of the Wyckoff, where all of the accumulated Bitcoin gets resold to retail at a profit. Does anybody want to talk about that?
I've been tracking the PayPal mafia for over 2 decades now, and it was never, I must admit, never on my bingo card for Peter Thiel to be involved behind the scenes, PayPal mafia guy, David Sachs to be the crypto AI czar, Chamath to print something like this. And Chamath had clear anguish on his face 3 weeks ago on the All In pod when he was doing the math. It was like, my God, the money I would have if I did not sell my Bitcoin. And he was a very early Bitcoin. Him and a fund, they bought at one stage, they had at least 100,000 Bitcoin by my analysis in the past. and they sold it at like 3,000 or something. They got out of the position, and Chamath kind of wanted to hold on to it, but his partner said, "No, let's get it out of the fund. Let's invest more in technology. It's not really our core." And he's just ruining the day of not convincing his partners to hold. But then we have, let's not forget Elon Musk, PayPal mafia as well. Look at his role now in the government. I mean, it is just uncanny how Silicon Valley, VCs are now influencing the government and crypto very heavily. And I know when people here in the crypto space, oh, VCs, they're bad, they're just going to dump on you. But you got to remember, that's where the money comes from that starts everything in the world. All innovation comes from VCs, everybody. So my 2 cents. But this is huge as well. Chamath's piece. And I would like to say one more thing. Sorry if I'm talking too much. Cut me off, Marty, whenever you want. But this is massive because literally this is Metcalfe's law in effect. And I said for the longest time, if we can get to 100 million, say, daily active users, we're at 15.5 now, we get to 100 million, which at this rate could happen pretty fast, 2025, maybe 2026. That means there's 1 billion people on the planet using crypto. That means it's easy, absolutely easy to justify a $10 trillion crypto market cap, which means everything triples from here.
That's
I think it's really interesting. Really interesting what's happening in the US. Like I haven't seen a major economy do this for a long time, where they've essentially brought in business leaders to be czars or let's say consultants on major policy. I think interestingly, just around David Sachs and kind of the all-in crew, that they're big on regulatory capture. They're big against not over-regulating new industries, because that can often lead to long-term oligopolies. And I think that's something that they'll hopefully continue if they're going to be advising the government on that. So I would expect to see at least very little enforcement action, or maybe even a move of light regulation to start with, to allow these sort of new industries to flourish. I mean, Chamath was originally a Bitcoin maxi, or very much a Bitcoin bull. And then, like you said, he sold some. They obviously had that famous podcast where they were talking about Solana, and it was implied that they were selling it, even though they both kind of denied that since. But they are clearly more involved in the altcoin side of stuff as well. Like they believe in smart contract platforms. They're not just Bitcoin equals digital gold. That's all we allow. Like these guys get crypto very, 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 very well. So I think this is really bullish. I think it's super bullish what Elon's doing. I actually think that will ideally get bipartisan support. It's not just a cutback of government spending. It's a cutback of government spending due to efficiency, and I think that would be. I think the US needs that, like no doubt about it. I'd love for that to happen in pretty much every developed nation. Somebody came in and checked the costs and cut line items that just are not needed. Like we've seen what's just happened in Argentina when they've gone down that route, and the US are now similarly going to go down this route. So I think it's really, really good to see. I think even if you're not a fan of Trump, you should be a fan of the Doge. Like you should be a fan of the Doge.
Absolutely.
Can I say one thing about the Bitcoin, the PayPal mafia? I think it's a powerful insight that goes beyond crypto and investing. It is how powerful a group of friends or a group of colleagues can become. It's this famous quote by Naval, who I think he was not in the PayPal mafia, or perhaps he was, I don't know. But he said this famous quote, like, play long-term games with long-term people. And look here what is happening in the US, where these guys who did this company together 25 years ago, or when was it, are now shaping the US politics in completely different roles a quarter century later. So, when you go through your days, you work with some colleagues, you have some friends, take that perspective. Try to think, how will this, serve me 25 years from now? Because look at how these amazing, I think very admirable people that I truly admire, how they've taken these relationships that they built over 25 years ago into today's world in a completely different society, completely different environment, and leveraging that is powerful.
And there's an even funnier background story, which I don't know if you guys know, but Peter Thiel, who was kind of the PayPal CEO at the time, Musk wanted to build an everything app. He wanted to go much further than just money transfers and payments. And Peter Thiel said, no, we're already going too fast. And it was just moving too slow for Musk. So he went off and did Tesla. So that's another piece of interesting background. They're all friends still, but it's just the pace wasn't quick enough. And if you look at PayPal today versus 20 years ago, it's the same. It's pretty much the same. Anyway.
Yeah, the website looks the same.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion about whether Peter Thiel is involved as the henchman of this whole thing. In my community.
He is definitely behind the curtain. No doubt about that.
Okay,
Marty.
Moving on. Another great news this week coming is this long line, it seems every day, of Trump's new appointments being, crowd favorites. We've got Kash Patel being appointed to lead the FBI, which is a great thing because he's been a long time proponent of, trimming and auditing the FBI. Big friend of Trump's. And there we see he's been appointed. He was the previous chief of staff of the Department of Defense, very notable lawyer, a great guy. And I did some research. He's also a crypto bull. So Kash Patel coming in as an appointment to FBI chair. And then the other big one this week was Paul Atkins coming in to replace Gary Gensler. Obviously, at first, he was reluctant to take the position. But obviously, with a little trumping and a little pushing and persuading, he has accepted the role. And this is extremely bullish for crypto. If everyone's aware, he used to be the chairman of the SEC under George W. Bush, extremely pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto, pro-self-custody. I believe will make a radical change to the SEC in the USA. So let's talk about that. Mando, any feelings about these two appointments?
Look, I think Atkins is probably the bigger of the two, at least for crypto. I think it's very, very positive. There've been a number of different names being thrown into that camp, but with David Sachs and now Paul Atkins in their seats, I think we're setting ourselves up for a very, very pro-crypto administration here. And it seems as though the Fed isn't going to stand in the way either. Like they're not saying that Bitcoin's all these gold bulls are out on the timeline saying Bitcoin is a challenger to the US dollar. And Jerome Powell just went out and just said it's a challenger to gold. And I think that tells you everything. Like the US government is not going to get in the way of crypto here. So this is a very, very positive move. Hopefully we see some form of bipartisan policy come through next year around tokenization, maybe some stablecoin regulation, that sort of stuff, the stuff that hasn't happened over the last 4 years. And that sets us up for a very, very bullish, I think, 2025. This is all good.
Yeah, I'm not sure people are aware, but since 2017, Atkins has been co-chair of Token Alliance. If anyone's not aware, Token Alliance is a Chamber of Digital Commerce initiative. It's pretty much the #1 crypto lobby and organization at the federal level. So, Atkins has been a crypto bull pushing crypto and crypto regulation and innovation since 2017. So he's not just another lawyer or just another business guy. This guy has been pushing particularly crypto since 2017. Go ahead, James. Any thoughts? And then CTO after that on these two appointments?
Well, Atkins will push these 5 ETFs through very quickly. And as Manda says, extremely bullish for the space. Literally, you could not dream up a better setup for 2025. I literally, if you sat me down with a gun to my head, tell me the top 10 dream things you could ask for a bullish 2025. I couldn't make up 10 better items than we have today.
Yeah, here James is showing this. This is pulled off the Bloomberg. Here's all the upcoming ETFs filed. They're in all various states and forms, but as you can see, stacked all the traditional issuers, a couple of Solanas, a couple of XRPs, there's an HBAR. It's happening, people. We're moving on from Bitcoin and Ethereum. Wall Street is opening up to these tech stocks. And I think it's just a matter of time. I think David Sachs and Atkins will help push these through extremely fast. Now, obviously, the naysayers will, but the SEC this week said, then they're definitely not going to approve a Solana ETF under this administration. So that means until January 20, probably nothing will move. But after that, I think it'll be pretty fast and rapid. We'll see a Solana ETF. The big question is, I'm a Solana guy. The question is, will it be in kind or in cash? We've had now a year of the Ethereum and Bitcoin in cash methodology, and I think they've learned a lot. Hopefully, in my opinion, they'll accept in kind, which means that they can settle in the underlying asset and not move through cash. And so we'll see that. We don't really have much clarity. Anybody want to talk about the slide? CTO, any thoughts on this?
I just reflecting, it's only 1 month ago that at least I was thinking that what if the Elizabeth Warren camp wins the election in the US and they really get renewed confidence to crack down on this annoying crypto thing, and really if they won 4 more years in power, and I mean that could have gone bad. Now 1 month later we're sitting here and one appointment is more crypto positive than the next. Like literally the SEC chairman I didn't actually know that he had been chairman for this token alliance for what, 7 years. That's incredible. And we have Elon Musk in there, and it's incredible. What a turn of events it's just a month ago. And now we have all these things. We're only talking about how fast things will go and when they will approve what, not if. So I think that it looks fantastic from here, if backing up a little bit. And then I think that on one side, but then as Mando said earlier, that doesn't mean that things will go in a straight line up. The manipulation will, if anything, become more aggressive. Now there's more money at stake, bigger upsides. Manipulation will get bigger. But it is fantastic what we're seeing. Just 1 year ago, I could never imagine that we would be here.
Correct. And then not only do we have these fantastic new crypto appointments, but we've also got this unraveling CryptoGate, I call it, conspiracy. What was a conspiracy, and now it appears that it's becoming factual. And a lot of large players have whistleblown, opened up, all starting from the Joe Rogan, Mark Andreessen interview, where Mark Andreessen started to whistleblow a little bit about these to the general mainstream, and it opened up a can of worms. We see Caitlin Long, we see Brian Armstrong, we see members of the government coming forward and saying, yes, this is true. It appears that the government did have a strategic effort with a systemic effort to undermine crypto in the US. We all knew it. Anybody in crypto at the time, leading out of the FTX thing, knew there was something fishy going on. I call it the BlackRock accumulation. And they wanted to get into Bitcoin. They dropped the price using any means possible. They used Elizabeth Warren as a voice. They used Gary Gensler as an underpin at the regulatory side to propose negative, aggressive narratives. And crypto went down to 16,000, giving BlackRock an opportunity to buy in. And so this CryptoGate is unraveling, and we see it every day as well. And it's something that now Elon Musk and Doge, Department of Government Efficiencies, has said they will look into. So, this is a real thing. This is going on. I added here the XRP thing. I thought it was quite interesting that we saw a huge XRP pump. Obviously, we need to talk about that. XRP, being under tremendous regulatory legal scrutiny from the SEC, finally got its day and ran up to where I guess it rightfully should have been all along, which was roughly, pretty much the same gains as Solana over the year, but within a few weeks. And there was all sort of a strange unraveling in that we saw extreme volatility on the Upbit South Korean exchange. At the same time, we saw XRP spike up, and then the next day we saw the South Korean government go into coup and into political turmoil. So it appears as if they used XRP as a sort of escape and store of value to move their currency, knowing that this would happen. So we have a lot of these things happening at the same time. It appears as if governments are shuffling. These conspiracies are becoming reality. There's going to be more analysis of these things, and heads might fall. Any thoughts on this, Mando? You want to start off with that? What's your thoughts on the CryptoGate scandal?
I think we all knew it, right?
agree.
So is CryptoGate is the one specifically for South Korea?
No, Choke Point 2.0 is CryptoGate.
CryptoGate is the choke point, the whole choke point initiative.
Choke Point is just all it showed me is how powerful the Joe Rogan podcast is. Like,
correct. Me too.
Like, everyone in crypto knew this was happening. Like, and in fact was making a lot of noise about it happening, and nothing was being done. And then suddenly, Mark Andreessen's gone on Joe Rogan, and it's been it's suddenly just going to stop. Like, it's kind of funny. It just shows you how powerful these sort of podcasts are about getting underlooked narratives by mainstream media. Like, no mainstream media outlet is writing a story about how crypto is being edged out by traditional banks, right? Like, that's not a story that their bosses or their execs need to tell or want to tell. Like, in fact, they kind of probably want to tell the anti-story. So I love it. I love that like we can get these sort of important issues out there through these sort of podcasts. So hopefully we see like Brian Armstrong go on there as well. Like, make some more noise. Like, let's really uncover what's been going on. Coinbase has definitely been making a lot of noise since Mark Andreessen went on that podcast. So hopefully we get to see more crypto people go on Rogan.
Yep. And one shout out to Nick Carter as well. He put together a kind of a org chart of the Choke Point 2.0 team in all the government agencies 3 years ago. He nailed it. And everybody thought he was crazy. Absolutely nailed it. And Mark Andreessen supported him. And they got these behind the curtain stealth agencies that have extreme power. And they shouldn't have any power based on the laws, but they do. And it's just incredible. You know that famous image of Warren and Gensler kind of whispering to each other wearing C-19 masks? Like, that is exactly how government operates. Now, for the first time in the history of the world, a light will be shone on all the corruption that happens behind the scenes with Patel and others. It's going to be, again, a very exciting time to be alive. And a lot of people are very nervous right now, which actually makes me nervous because some bad things could happen. Hopefully not, but we'll see.
Yeah, CTO, any thoughts on this? How have you perceived it in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't new to this technology revolution. It's like the Galileo affair in the 1600s. You know, the guy says that, oh no, but it's actually the world is not centered around the earth and everything, and the popes come, and the pope come and throws him in jail, and he should sit there and rot, and all his books should be burned. And then later it's like, actually he was right. So that's the same thing that's happened. Now there's like disruption again then, and then everyone who is talking about this Bitcoin and Brian Armstrong trying to build companies, they have to be preferably thrown in jail. But if that's not possible, at least should their bank accounts be closed, and they should be shunned from the civilized society as much as possible. And then comes the day where there's a new, not Pope, but a new Czar in town. And then it's like, actually, they were right. This Bitcoin was pretty good after all. So, you know, maybe they should get their bank accounts back. So it's like that in every technology disruption. I know we talked about it here before. Marty, you're a technologist also. You've seen this through all the technology revolutions. I mean, internet was very controversial in the beginning. And the fact that there wasn't an editor of internet, that there is no one like on the newspaper who is responsible for what's written. And then I still remember the discussion, like the politicians couldn't even get the concept, like who's the editor of internet? No, there isn't any editor. People can write whatever they want. And they felt that it was super dangerous and you know, shouldn't be permitted. And then we almost came to that point again here in 2024, that like big, powerful politicians start saying that we should keep control about what everything written on social media, and there should be no free speech, and it should be limited, and we should have an editor afterward. And then Elon Musk and everyone kind of took up a fight and say, no, freedom of speech is important. And so we have this kind of shift in people in charge and the narratives. And I feel that we've turned that corner where Galileo was, released from prison, and it turned out that Bitcoin wasn't the enemy of society. It was pretty useful. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. We've got not too much time left. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying we get a couple of little crypto stories. We'll talk about 00 and Zeus, maybe.
Yes. A couple things. First of all, did you see the total market cap of crypto is now larger than Amazon, taking the number 2 spot from Apple. So crypto is bigger than Apple in market cap right now, which is going to get a lot of eyes, and only gold lies ahead. So congratulations on the market cap of crypto for beating Apple, which is a big thing. Then we've got some news in Solana. Obviously, Sol Strategies, one of my favorite companies, the MicroStrategies that's using Solana as a reserve. They made some pretty impressive moves. They've bought further validators, selling stock as well, selling bonds against their stock, and now have put in an application to list on the NASDAQ. So I believe that will be the first access and exposure to Solana on the US market will be through a Sol Strategies NASDAQ listing. That's very interesting. At the same time, we see a couple of key members from the Solana Foundation branch off and start 00. I'm not sure a lot of people have heard about this, but this is a massive undertaking. I've always been telling you that the number one bottleneck to crypto adoption is not blockchain at all. It's the actual internet layer. The internet itself cannot handle the scale of transactions required, to onboard the next billion people. And we saw that with Solana when they got their congestion issues. The congestions were not at the blockchain level. They were at the internet level, which is, when you go through your web browser, through TCP/IP, you go to a web server. These are all centralized systems. And most of the websites run on Amazon and other Azure type clouds. And that whole infrastructure is old. It's from the 90s and the 2000s, and it is well due for an upgrade. And this 00 initiative is taking it on. So this is massive news under the Solana umbrella. A good friend of mine, Austin, will be running it. This is all research coming out of Dr. Kevin Bauer's Fire Dancer project, which have started to actually engineer a lot of these things. And this is to build an entirely new decentralized internet layer in order to capture these transactions at scale and get them to the blockchains where they need to be settled and processed. So,
and of course, Marty, you may want to mention there was a lot of FUD flying around Twitter. It's like, oh, the core team of Solana is leaving. No, the core team on Solana are building a new blockchain on Solana. And if you look at the team here, Austin ran strategy since the beginning, and Kevin Bowers was the guy behind Fire Dancer. And if you look at Kevin Bauer's background, he's all about scaling. He's got 35 years of scaling experience in traditional hardware, etc. The other guy, I don't know, Andrew McConnell. Do you have any insight on Andrew?
Yeah, he's been a long-time Solana Foundation technical guy, another engineer. I think this is all just very cleverly done. It's a Solana initiative, but they've branched it out and rebranded it as 00 just to avoid maximum FUD. But I think at the end of the day, this is we all know that the major problem they had when they finally hit scale was at the Google level. Basically, Google has a technology to accept socket sequences. In other words, every time you make a request on the internet, it goes into a sequencer which gets serviced by the web servers, and that technology fell over and broke. And so one of the things Kevin Bauer's team did was to start to rebuild that. And I think taking that work, they've now expanded it to a full-blown project to try and re-engineer not only a solution for Solana, but a solution for the entire internet. And so, I call this Internet 2. So just on point, here we go. It's unraveling. I was correct. Internet 2 is a thing. And this project will be sort of the benchmark, the start that do the initial research. Then I'm sure a lot of other teams will copy over the next months. You'll see all kinds of layer 0 pop-ups.
And a reminder, don't go out and buy 00 token. There is no token. I'm sure there's 50 fake ones already. So just be careful.
There will not be a token. There will not be a token. Okay, and leading into the end of the show, I guess we've covered that. Zeus, another of my favorites. Zeus is a one-to-one peg, permissionless layer being built also under the Solana umbrella. These are a bunch of guys that I've become very close with. an unbelievable team that are building the first ever permissionless bridge. In other words, the ability to have a asset represented on another blockchain that is not just backed by some human agreement with some multi-sig wallet somewhere, but actually is through computer code pegged at a one-to-one level. And they went live this week with their first mainnet, just one validator. They call them Guardians, and people had the ability to stake their Zeus tokens, and it sold out in 18 minutes, 500,000 Zeus. And this is an extremely, extremely exciting project because they're going to attack Bitcoin first. Once they've got Bitcoin on Solana, they're going to go for Doge. And so you can see the roadmap will include all of the proof of work, slow legacy chains, and allow them to become fast and executable and participate in DeFi. So that's Zeus Network. Take a look at them.
Could you take a second, Marty, as well? Because there's so much confusion about Zeus. My vision for it was for it to be a layer 2 on Bitcoin to help Bitcoin scale, and it'll be ultimately a competitor to Stacks. Can you talk about the interface?
Yeah. They actually called it from the beginning a layer 1.5 because instead of rebuilding an entirely new blockchain like Stacks did, they just reused Solana. So they took a fork of Solana, they ran Solana validators, they updated the code to this incredibly clever algorithmic pegging, and integrated with native Bitcoin. So this is the first time a single instance of software is talking to native Bitcoin as well as native Solana and integrating the two together. And so it's extremely different to Coinbase Bitcoin or wrap Bitcoin. Somebody on my community the other day asked a question. They said, I've got this wrap Bitcoin. How do I unwrap it? To get native Bitcoin. And the answer is you can't. It's not actually Bitcoin. You can't wrap Bitcoin. Well, the Zeus approach will be wrapped Bitcoin that you can unwrap. You can literally unwrap the ZBTC and you will have actual native Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet. So it's a huge step forward for the industry and what I call multi-chain, where eventually we won't really know where the assets are. All chains will be interoperable and at the native permissioners level. There'll be none of this, permission backing by human agreements and centralization. So that's another great news for the industry. And then to sum it up, let's just go through the rest of the week. We've got a large week, guys. I don't know if you guys are aware on the macro level. Before we end, we've got the US CPI on the 11th. We've got the Bank of China interest rate decision on the 11th. We've got the US 10-year bond note auction on the 11th. China economic meeting on the 11th. That's their biggest meeting of the year. The ECB, the European Central Bank interest rate decision on the 12th. Then we've got the 30-year bond. We'll learn about the new, what kind of demand there is for the US 30-year bond on the 12th. And then Abu Dhabi Finance Week this week, where Larry Fink will be talking. We're going to get a new presentation from Larry Fink. God knows what he's going to talk about. I can't wait to see his presentation. We've got Circle there, Jeremy on stage. We've got Richard Teng of Binance. We've got Lily Liu of Solana. Everybody will be at the Abu Dhabi Finance Week. You'll see everybody there.
Yeah. Ray Dalio and Mike Novogratz are hanging out with Mert.
There we go.
The night before last in Dubai. So they're there too.
And then obviously there's the South Korean political drama unfolding. We should get some news about that. We've obviously got a little war narrative with the Middle East, with Syria and what's going on there, which I'm sure the market makers will use as a narrative for FUD. So a lot of things going on this week, as well as Vancouver in Canada, Vancouver City. This week we'll vote to introduce Bitcoin as a reserve asset for the city, which will be big for Canada. And we've got the NASDAQ revealing where the MicroStrategies will be in the 100 index, correct? On the 13th, I believe.
Yep. 13th or 15th, yeah.
And then obviously we spoke about the US FASB accounting rules changing on the 15th. That'll be roughly this time next week. We'll be covering that on the next show. But that's about it for me. I think that rounds out the hour. Anything else you guys to go around the room, Mando? Anything you want to talk about before we end?
No, I think just what I said earlier in the show. Be bullish, be bullish, but be cautious, I think. And if you're not invested yet, I think you can get chances to. Just make sure you take them.
There we go. CTO, any final thoughts?
I think that I'm very interested in the altcoins here. The Bitcoin dominance really has this huge nosedive. And I think that's an interesting development. So that's where my interest lies now. I think so too. Bitcoin might chop around here a little bit, but there's a lot of opportunities now in the market.
So is that code CTO for you dumping your Bitcoin into altcoins right now?
No, I don't think so. I'm not. I haven't sold anything. Absolutely not. But I asked in the chat earlier if anyone had sold any Bitcoin, right, at 100K, and no one said they did. But I think that you have, guys. I think some of you have kind of swapped some Bitcoin into altcoins, and that is also selling the Bitcoin. So I do think we see some of that, and that could add some little bit of pressure to the Bitcoin price, because a lot of people are sitting here watching these dead dinosaur coins go up 300%, even though they're not doing anything, and thinking, why am I sitting here with my Bitcoin that goes up 1%? So I think there's an element of that right now in the market, and there are a lot of opportunities. If you look around in the altcoin charts, that's a lot of very, very good charts right now.
Yeah.
So
James, final thoughts?
Yeah, the one piece you missed is maybe this. CME futures are pretty much looking at 90% chance of a rate cut on December 18th, which will further fuel risk assets. So that's a big one too. So there's nothing but goodness. But what we've noticed as well so far over the last bullish season, like September, October, Moonvember, where we did nearly 40% on Bitcoin, the first 7 to 10 days are choppy. And then things settle down day 11 onwards.
That's right.
It's the 9th of December. So we've been through we had a bit of a crazy pump in the first few days, but then a little bit of chop solidation. I think there's a lot of goodness still coming. You know, what's going to happen with Amazon, Microsoft, Treasuries. You mentioned Vancouver. There's lots like Dennis Porter. Watch him on Twitter as well. He has the ear to the ground of what's happening with treasuries around the planet. And somehow people whisper in his ear and tell him what's coming. He can't actually disclose it until the actual time comes, but he says a lot of crazy things are coming. You will not believe, through the end of December and into January. So watch for that. And we'll be here to report live.
There will be a couple of things from Solana. There's the Jupiter is now. You know, Jupiter usually has a big pump in January. They voted to do almost $1 billion airdrop in January. So that's going to be quite interesting on the Solana network, as well as the Pudgy Penguins.
But can you clarify, Marty, is that to users or stakers?
To users. Okay. And they've said they're going to be using all kinds of new countermeasures to make sure it goes to users and not to airdrop farmers. And, you know, they're always pushing and innovating the latest airdrop. So I'm extremely excited to see what they come up with. And then also, Amanda, I'm not sure you're aware of the Pudgy Penguins. You know, the Pudgy Penguins is a very, very well-known large cap NFT project. They're now minting a coin called Pudgy Penguins, and it's going out on Solana, and it's the talk of the town. And everyone's saying it's going to break the internet. That's also coming up.
In fact, I remember Pudgy Penguins was former DCA member Ivan on tech. He could no longer make the show because of conflicts of time. But he was always big into Pudgy Penguins or whatever the hell they are. So
they're doing well. They're doing well. They just flipped Bored Apes, which is, if you know anything about NFTs, that's quite a big flip. It's quite a big flip. Interestingly, the founder is actually doing an ETH L2. So the founder Luca Netz is doing an L2 called Abstract at the moment, but the coin is coming out on Solana, so that caused a lot of heads to turn.
Yeah, it's called
exactly. The NFT, unless I'm mistaken, the NFT is on Ethereum. So everyone expected that the coin would come out on Ethereum, but it's coming out on Solana.
Yeah, it's called Pengu, guys. It's not out yet. Be very careful. Don't buy frauds. Pengu, it'll be very well put out there. Just make sure you don't get the wrong one, and it'll be an airdrop. Anticipated to be, even Anatolia of Solana's talking about it. It's anticipated to be the biggest airdrop of all time. So we've got Jupiter airdrop and Pengy coming up.
I can't believe we're talking about Pudgy Penguins.
We're going from the Treasury Reserves to Pudgy Penguins. That's how we're getting the show. Thank you, guys. All four of us are out. We'll see you next week for with the latest of the week coming up. and we'll see you then. So thanks for joining.
And links for everybody. We don't know where you're watching. You can watch on all our channels, but links for Mando's newsletter, Mando Minutes, which is awesome. If you want to ramp up every day, what's going on, and CTO, and of course, and Marty Party's live streams. I jump on them every now and again to talk crap with everybody. It's fun.
Like a bar. It's like a crypto bar.
Exactly. We call it like Marty Stool Sports. How about that?
There you go.
Thanks, gang. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.